presenting this talk to you guys today. I had actually originally written these case studies to present to large companies to teach them how to defend themselves from startups. I know that makes me a traitor, right? But then when the Startup Istanbul folks emailed me, I thought it might be a lot more interesting for you guys to sort of understand how incumbents, how existing companies look at how they need to defend themselves from you trying to eat their lunch, trying to take their business. So we're going to talk about a few different companies today. First, I want to introduce myself. My name is Sam Mallikarjunan. Principal marketing strategist at HubSpot. I also teach the advanced digital marketing course at the Harvard Division of Continuing Education. Shameless plug, I am also the author of the book How to Sell Better Than Amazon, which is, thanks to our publisher, ironically available for purchase on Amazon. Real quick, data, very important to all of us. As marketers, as entrepreneurs, etc. Since I can't really see everybody and see how you're reacting, I'm going to use applause as sort of my meter to when I do surveys to understand whether it is you guys agree with it. So I'm going to name 3 things, and if you like any of those 3 things, I want you to give me a big round of applause, okay? So right now, this is the least excited you could possibly be, right? It's after lunch, everybody's a little bit tired, the coffee's not quite kicking in. So if you like any of these 3 things, I want you to help me set a ceiling so I can understand it. Profits, puppies, or pandas? If you like any of those 3 things, give me a big round of applause. All right, some of you people are weird if you don't like any of those 3 things. Okay. Now, quick round of applause. If you've ever seen a boxing or a mixed martial arts combat sports event, quick round of applause. Okay, a few of you. I know I may not look it, but in a younger day, I actually dabbled in amateur cage fighting when I was living in Tampa, Florida. And it was a very, very interesting experience because I remember the first time that I ever got kicked in the leg. It was shockingly painful. It's just surprising how much it can hurt just to have somebody kick you in the leg. And the mentality that you have, where you expect to win, obviously, going into a match. You expect to win when you're launching a startup. But understanding that they expect to win too. They're going to try to win, and they think that they're going to be successful. Leg kicks, shockingly painful. And the key here is you got to be tough, right? Like we've all seen the movies. You got to take the hits and you got to rise up dramatically in slow motion while music plays quietly in the background. You got to be tough. I love the quote by Rocky Balboa. It's not about how hard you can hit. It's about how hard you can get hit and keep moving forward. I love that quote from Rocky. But I'm not really here to teach you about the slugfest, battling it back and forth in sales and marketing and pricing and everything else like that. I'm here to tell you about this one time I got knocked out. I'm told I got knocked out, and the reason I say that is because I didn't actually see his leg move. I just woke up sometime later on the mat. I presume it was a few seconds. It felt like it might have been a few years. And the interesting thing was, my trainer wasn't actually mad at me because I didn't do anything wrong. I had the right stance, and I was good. I was positioned well to fight. But I lost anyways. I did all the right things, and I still woke up on my back. Now, you guys are here, and I'm confident that you can figure out, marketing and sales and pricing and all that sort of stuff. You've got that. You can attend the webinars, you can attend the speakers, you're going to figure that out. What I want to teach you is not how to win the knockdown, drag-out fight between you and like another competitor with pricing. I want to teach you how to win the fight that you never saw coming. In this case, you guys are the kick that they never saw coming, right? You are the surprise kick where they can do everything right and you can still destroy a business that's been around for 100 years. Now, normally if it's in a slow, drag-out fight, we've got time, we can hire consultants, we can catch our breath, but the world has changed. You guys can now disrupt markets way faster than has ever previously been possible. You've all heard the classic example, right? Uber is what we all use when we're talking about disruptive innovation. It happened really, really fast, right? Their innovation was instead of ride, wait for call, ride, it was ride, right? They lowered the cost to the end user by maximizing the utilization of their network. It's really all they did. And it's had a huge impact on the taxi industry, particularly in the United States. In fact, a lot of the taxi industries think that they might not be able to survive. They may not actually be able to adapt to Uber coming after them. And they thought they were safe, though, because I don't know how it is in the rest of the world, but in the United States, one of the best business investments you can make is in politicians. and lobbyists. And in Las Vegas, they had spent a lot of money on lobbyists. The taxi companies had great lobbyists, great reach with the politicians, and it didn't help them at all. Their quote was that we put into office the very people that destroyed us. What they thought was safe, a nice, safe move to win a slug-it-out match, can't work when you have something like Uber that's moving so fast, that has adoption that is so quick. Airbnb, another classic example. Hotels in Manhattan in 2014, September, booked 480,000 room nights. Nice business. Airbnb booked 2.8 million room nights in that same time period. Interesting thing, you can lose a fight you didn't actually know that you were in. Right? It doesn't have to be this thing where we formally stand across from each other and declare war on each other's businesses. You can also win fights that your opponent doesn't know that you were in, because they may not be coming after you and they still have the potential to disrupt your business. You can be disrupted by accident. Kodak, one of the classic sort of American brands, went bankrupt, which is kind of sad because we actually call it the Kodak moment, right? In the US, that was their brand positioning. You structure your lives around creating and capturing these Kodak moments. But the Kodak went bankrupt because the Kodak moment went bankrupt. We don't sit there and position ourselves for the perfect picture anymore and set up our family in like the beautiful spot. We take pictures constantly. There's probably more pictures being taken at this one conference than were taken in the entire, summer vacations that I took as a child. This is me taking 6 of the exact same pictures of my wife taking a picture, by the way. This is how the world changed for Kodak. Another example, TomTom, very successful company. You're looking at 2008, you're riding high, you're seeing a lot of growth in your stock, you're seeing a lot of growth in revenue, and then suddenly, a chart that no CEO wants to see is declining growth. Some of that is the recession, that's fair, but they never recovered. And why didn't they recover? Well, quick round of applause if you have a smartphone. Okay, I think more of you actually have a smartphone than like profits, puppies, or pandas. I worry about you. But congratulations, you're what killed those two companies. Google didn't set out, Android didn't set out, iPhone didn't set out to be like, oh, you know what we really want to do is go after TomTom's GPS market. They didn't go out and be like, we really want to disrupt the digital camera market. They decided to include it because it was a good, useful, very mediocre feature, by the way. I remember when we first had like multi-megabit pictures on cell phones, they did not think that this was going to be a thing that destroyed their business. The cell phones did it by accident. Sometimes I feel bad, I regret that I wasn't around in like the 60s or the 70s during the real heady times of the computer science revolution, because I just feel like there was so much new. I could have had so much fun and made a ton of money. Or even further back, I feel like during the Industrial Revolution, there's so much opportunity. Like I could have had so much fun and made a ton of money. But today is just as interesting. People 20, 30, 40 years from now are going to look back and say, man, I wish I'd been around in 2016 because I could have had a ton of fun and made a ton of money. There's an old curse/compliment. May you live in interesting times, right? There's another group that lived in very interesting times. It was the dinosaurs. Interesting doesn't necessarily mean enjoyable. We're in a mass extinction of businesses. In the United States, I'll continue to use us as an example. It's a large and mature market. 70% of the companies on the Fortune 1000 list are brand new within the last 10 years. You think about that. We think about that as a defining characteristic. You're a Fortune 500 CEO. You're a Fortune 1000 company. And 70% of them are new. In fact, the average life expectancy has declined from 75 years on the Fortune 500 to 15 years today, trending towards 5 years, according to a report from Forrester. Something as fundamental as being a Fortune 500 company is not something that keeps you safe. Now, obviously, this brings opportunities for new entrepreneurs, for new startups, for new species, if you will. I think it would be kind of hard for all of us to have a vibrant innovation ecosystem if we had to fight velociraptors on the way to work, or if T-Rexes were also clogging up the streets with traffic. So the fact that the dinosaurs went extinct was actually quite handy for us in terms of our development as a species. That's that orange line that you get to see right there that helped cute little mammals as well as adorable entrepreneurs like yourselves sort of hit the market. So, before I teach you how to block knockout kicks, I want to help you understand how they work. You need to understand what that kick is, because people overuse this term a lot. I've heard it probably, I don't know, 20 times already today, disruption. We have this disruptive idea. We're going to disrupt this market. There's a specific framework, right? Round of applause. Anybody ever seen the movie Princess Bride? Yeah? Applaud. Come on, I can't see. Okay, a couple of you. All right. Famous quote from that is, I don't think that word means what you think it means. Oh, you don't have to hide your head. It's a great movie. All right. How did we get here? It's not that you guys are just really, really smart people. Plenty of smart people are willing to work for $500,000 a year salary and a bunch of stock bonuses and a company car for really, really large companies. The difference is the way in which we have opportunities to compete with businesses. So, work itself has gotten harder. It's gotten more competitive. It's gotten faster. And you may feel weird applauding to this, but give it a quick round of applause if you feel like work has gotten more competitive, the pressure has increased. Yeah. It's tough. I can feel the stress when I'm at work in a much different way than maybe I felt even just 10 or 15 years ago. Everyone around you is facing this same reality. There's a great quote from Alvin Toffler. The illiterate of the 21st century will not be those who can't read and write, but those who cannot learn, unlearn, and relearn. I want to adapt his quote a little bit. The strategy illiterate of the 21st century will be those who cannot master a business model, but they cannot learn, unlearn, and relearn what models matter. Change the way that they look at the world. Decreased technical barriers to entry, decreased barriers to movement, increased availability of capital. Everything has gotten harder. We have more competition. Frankly, 15 years ago, I didn't have to worry about most of you because I only had to beat the people in Boston, right? Like you didn't have the technological capacity 20 or 30 years ago to be competitive with my company here. I got to be kind of lazy. I got to have like this nice, relatively gentle life where I didn't have to deal with every single brilliant person on the face of the freaking planet. Now I do. This is how we did business strategy in the 20th century. You develop some sort of proprietary knowledge, an invention or expertise, something like that. And there was this precious resource that you had to consume. And then you'd extract value from that proprietary knowledge, invention, whatever it is, right? Like you have that knowledge stock, and then you extract value from it by pushing it to the market. But this doesn't work anymore because the depreciation of knowledge has dramatically increased. It used to be we could rely on an invention or my expertise as a professional holding me out through, 10, 20, 30 years. Now, you're like 3, 4, 5 years, and this cool thing that you've invented, everybody knows it. Uber's business model, the on-demand thing, I think we've already seen it. A couple of you guys are working on taking that exact business model, this proprietary knowledge flow that they have, and applying it to new and interesting markets. Just holding on to knowledge is not what it used to be. This is a picture of just the connections between Facebook users. The entire world is now connected. The entire world is competing with you simultaneously. So the technology adoption life cycle, you've probably seen this curve. This is nice, easy bell curve that shows how people adapt and adopt new products. You've got the innovators on the far left, the people who would just buy everything, and then all the way on the far side, you have the laggards like, for example, my mother, who just switched off dial-up internet 2 years ago. She was paying AOL $29.95 a month for dial-up internet. There were always going to be some laggards. This, however, is not as smooth as it used to be either. And by the way, the term disruptive innovation is so overused that I could only find one graphic that conveyed the magnitude of it, and it was dramatic squirrel. Because I feel like every time somebody says disruptive innovation, you can see them looking at you with this sort of drama. A disruptive innovation has a specific definition. It creates a new market or value network that disrupts an existing market or value network. It usually starts at the low end of a market, Tesla, for example, being a notable exception. All of these things have exceptions. And it brings in previously non-participating people into the ecosystem. I never used to take private cars, right? I wasn't really a private car sort of person. Tech startups in Boston don't cover private cars. It's not part of the compensation package. I took taxis, and it was a horrible experience. Uber managed to take part of the existing logistics and structure of the black car system, people forget that the black car came first. Right? I was riding in black cars before I was riding in taxis or personal cars that had been called with by Uber. It brought me into the black car market where I previously hadn't been. Other examples, personal computers versus mainframes and mini computers. Nobody probably here owns a mini computer anymore. Mini mills, integrated steel mills, cell phones versus fixed line telephones. Very few people build new fixed line telephones these days. Community colleges and four-year colleges, discount retailers, full service department stores, retail medical clinics. And one of my favorite examples, which is the phonograph and the piano. In the 19th century in the United States, the piano was the apex of home entertainment technology. If you had a piano, you knew you'd made it. Your friends knew you'd made it. Your family knew you'd made it. You'd get everybody together around and you'd have a little, concert with your kids or whatever, or maybe your family. And that was the center of the home entertainment system. And then in 1877, Thomas Edison invents the phonograph. And there's not much immediate impact to the piano industry. In 1914 is really when pianos hit their heyday. Steinway, one of the preeminent piano manufacturers in the world, did 400,000 pianos that year. Phonographs, on the other hand, did only $56 million in sales. In 1919, pianos were still doing $158 million in sales in the United States. And then in a very short period of time, it all collapsed. And I promise I won't use this as a metaphor for pianos being a dying industry, but Steinway had to use all the excess wood to build caskets. Phonographs were a better way, a more flexible way, a more accessible way to have an awesome entertainment experience in your home. And again, pianos took decades, right? We don't get decades. We're competing with the speed of light itself. How quickly can you talk to somebody in Romania, talk to an engineer in Romania, and then talk to a finance person in Israel, and then talk to somebody in Egypt, and then talk to somebody in the United States, and then get funding from the UK instantly, immediately? So it used to be this nice, easy, smooth bell curve. It's not that anymore. Now it's this very fast curve where you have a small number of trial users, and then you have the mass majority very quickly. All right, so if you're a large business, you're frightened right now. You think of yourself as a Fortune 500 employee, and you realize that you may only have 5 years left to claim that title. If you're a startup entrepreneur, you're looking at this and you're very excited because you may not be a Fortune 500 CEO right now, but you could be in just 5 short years. What can you do about this if you're a large incumbent company? Well, you can survive disruption. There's a concept called the extendable core, which is the piece of your business model that an incumbent couldn't replicate without adopting the same cost structure. Right? They can't actually disrupt that piece of your business. Round of applause if you've ever stayed in an Airbnb. Okay? A few of you? All right. Okay. Round of applause if you've ever been to a conference or event at an Airbnb. Yeah, it's ridiculous on the face of it, right? Like, I'm not going to have a conference in somebody's living room that I'm renting for 2 days. As opposed to, the Marriott or the Boston Convention Center or here we are today, it's a thing that Airbnb can't really eat their lunch. And Airbnb can't go take that piece of the market. That's an extendable core for those hotels. But you do want to do more than just survive disruption. You want to create it. If you're waiting for somebody else to kill you, you don't have that runway anymore. You don't have 100 years for the CEO of the piano companies to figure out what's happening to them. So at HubSpot, for example, we're a sales and marketing software company. Be pretty surprised, but round of applause if anybody's heard of HubSpot. Oh, okay. I take it back. Apparently we have a good marketing team. But we rolled out a free low-end version of our software. And as you can imagine, this is a little bit controversial in our company because some people canceled their paid HubSpot subscriptions and moved down to the free version. Some people who would have bought a paid version never did. They're using the free version instead. But the reason is, lead-in is what we call this piece of technology. It was a good idea. It's a free, lightweight lead capture and analytics plugin. You just pop on your website, and you can start generating leads tomorrow. It was a good idea. One of you folks was going to build it. We decided to figure it out and build it first so that instead of us losing revenue, which is going to happen anyways, You were going to build it. One of you here was going to be like, HubSpot's ignoring this entire segment of the market. I'm going to go build a tool for it. We decided to build it, so at least they're in our upgrade path. We've built a moat around our company. All right, quick round of applause. And let's define a large company as like 2,000 or more employees. Round of applause if you've ever worked at a large company. Okay. A large company, obviously, a very famous one is IBM. They did a study in the 1980s, and they found that it would take 9 months to ship an empty box at IBM. That's how convoluted their processes were. That's how slow they were to move and react to challenges. IBM, and by the way, I get to make fun of them because I married into IBM. My father-in-law worked there for like 30 or 40 years. I have one of the original Think signs from back in the day. He calls it "I've been moved" or incredibly boring meeting. Other people call it incompatible business machines, idiots become managers, internal bureaucratic mess. But for me, it's one of the most fascinating case studies that I've ever really looked at. And so my promise to you is it won't be an incredibly boring monologue. The fact that they were so terrible at adapting to change, at moving quickly, at being agile, and managed to survive into the 21st century is what makes it so astonishing. It wouldn't surprise me if one of you, faced a new technology in your market and you said, okay, we're going to pivot and we're going to do all this stuff. That's not surprising. You have it built into your DNA. The folks at IBM did not. In a world of these new race cars, these fast-moving machines, this new technology that IBM had to deal with, the dinosaur somehow managed to strap rocket skates onto its feet and keep up with the competition. By the way, classic example here of the internet has everything. I Googled dinosaur wearing rocket skates, and somebody had a picture of it. IBM, obviously, their chairman, Thomas Watson, was quoted, "I think there's a world for maybe 5 computers." IBM has managed to be wrong about almost everything, but still somehow survive, still somehow make the right strategic moves. So when they're competing in the mainframe market, there were about 8 or so companies that were very competitive in the mainframes market, which was IBM's core business leading up into the 1980s. None of them meaningfully survived into the PC marketplace. In 1981, they had 62% share of the mainframe business. Their gross margins were a fantastic 60% compared to computers. But their overall market share had declined from 60% to 32% with the advent of the mini computer. DEC, one of the companies that was working in mini computers and manufacturing those, also had another very interesting element, which is that they let other engineers, and okay, you're going to say, duh, of course we have an ecosystem where we let people build on top of our platform. Okay, that's new to these people in this day. DEC said, we're going to let other engineers build on our platform. IBM said, no, we're a vertically integrated company. That's who we are. So 91 companies tried to build mini computers between 1968 and 1972. None of them meaningfully survived into the PC market except IBM. So put yourself in the chairman and CEO of IBM's shoes. It's 1980. You're number 8 on the Fortune 500. You've been in the top 10 since 1965. You've been in the top 100 since Fortune started tracking their list at all. You are enterprise technology. The famous quote, right? Nobody's ever been fired for buying IBM. You're the definition. You're a big blue. But you missed mini computers, and you see Commodore, Atari, Apple. Anybody actually have a Trash 80 back in the day, the TRS-80? Quick round of applause. There's got to be at least a couple people. Okay, maybe not. The TRS-80 is referred to as the Trash 80. And Frank Carey now takes over as CEO, following the greatest period of growth and expansion in IBM's history, led by Thomas Watson Jr. Honestly, I wouldn't be too worried. We are enterprise technology, we're dominating the Fortune 100, and we're having the best period of revenue expansion in the history of our business. But he was smarter than that. He knew that there was something coming. Somebody came and pitched this to him, and you can tell me how you would think of this if you were the CEO. You've got this new product that has terrible margins. The margins are 3 times worse than our core business. It's probably going to cannibalize a lot of the sales that we normally would have gotten. Oh, it's also not going to be vertically integrated. We're going to build it from all these other parts. That's cool, right? And it's going to be in a completely separate office down in Florida, and we're going to take some of the best engineers in the company. If you're the CEO, are you really responding positively to that pitch from Don Estridge, who was the person who led Project Chess for IBM? It's kind of hard to think that you would. But we like to think that we're disruptors, and obviously I see PCs coming. I really need to be involved in that. But thinking about where IBM was coming from and the fact that they were able to do that, moving from even being vertically integrated to using parts from everyone else. And obviously it worked, right? The sales of IBM PCs, IBM is just synonymous with PCs. We'll get into how they screwed it up later. But again, first analyze that from the fact that even now, with our ability to run ads and do market testing and user testing and all the sophisticated technology that we have, 72% of new products flop. They don't reach adoption. They don't make the payback on the R&D. That's today. So IBM rolled out the PC with a brilliant marketing campaign, a relatively mediocre price point relative to the other computers that were on the option. And the interesting thing to them was they were trying to create a new market. Your own IBM computer, right? Imagine that, having your own computer in your house. Now, we obviously have more computing power in our pockets than sent the astronauts to the moon, but back then, that was a revolutionary concept that was creating an entirely new market. By the end of 1982, they were selling one PC every minute of every day. Obviously, ended up dominating the market. And one of my favorite parts of this story, Steve Jobs, a hero to entrepreneurs around the world, cried when he saw that the IBM PC won Machine of the Year. It's the only non-human, or the only inanimate man-made object to ever win Person of the Year, awarded by Time magazine in the United States. Steve Jobs got this mailed to him, and he had done an interview for Time, and he assumed that it was going to be his face on the front of Time magazine. And then he gets it, and he sees the IBM PC. Now again, looking at this timeline, 9 months to ship an empty box, and in 1 year, IBM invents the IBM PC with a completely new process. They also made a rather fateful decision, which was to adopt this sort of mentality of letting other people play on our playground, letting other people build in our ecosystem, letting other people have access to our platform. They didn't want to have to outbasic Microsoft, VisiCalc, VisiCorp, et cetera. They knew that they didn't have the resources to do that for this small team in Florida. By the way, I live in Florida now, but back then, Florida was still mostly swampland. It wasn't necessarily the place where you wanted to go. There's a reason we put our space program there. It's because if anything went horribly wrong, not many people would be affected. I love Florida, though. That's where I live. They also made a fateful move to have somebody else build the OS. They said they actually put out for bid the various pieces for the IBM PC. They made the IBM company compete for it. And they ended up giving the operating system to a tiny tech startup called Microsoft. But that's what allowed them to survive into the future. Their revenues continued to skyrocket. They survived the shift to PCs. They survived the collapse of the mainframes industry. And then they made another mistake. That's a story for another day. This happens a lot in a company. Something's successful. What do? You absorb it back into the main company, and then it dies and you die. Instead of what IBM should have done, again, story for another day, which is absorb the revolutionary DNA of the main company into the revolutionary DNA. They ended up selling their PC division to Lenovo in the 2000s. But learn this lesson well. This is a picture of Don Estridge at IBM, led Project Chess. Listen to your employees. Have motivated, empowered people who, if they see something coming, they should feel comfortable telling you something ridiculous. 3 times worse margins, cannibalizing our best sales, and I'm going to take the best engineers. Take that very, very seriously and make sure that people are empowered. Because what they did right, what Don Estridge did right, what everybody else did right at IBM that believed in this, was they put the customer at the center. They knew they weren't in the computer business. They were in the information processing and computing business. The famous quote from Henry Ford, obviously, if I had asked my customers what they wanted, they would have said a faster horse. Right? Not the ability to get from point A to point B fast, quickly and economically. That's not a level of insight into their needs that most consumers have back in the day. Another example, right? Plenty of people make lots of money selling quarter-inch drill bits. I've been all over the world. Never met a quarter-inch drill bit collector. Nobody wants to buy a quarter-inch drill bit. They want a quarter-inch hole. Theodore Levitt famously described marketing myopia when he talked about the railroads. The railroads weren't beat because of cars and planes, and it's easy to sort of excuse the railroad companies for their failure and decline in the United States. But it wasn't because of that. It's because they thought they were in the railroad business. They didn't realize they were in the transportation and communication business. We refer to this framework as the jobs to be done. One of the reasons I love IBM's story here, and this is true in your personal life as much as any professional endeavor you're ever going to undertake, the greatest threat to true greatness is being moderately successful. Resting on your laurels, not focusing on how can I beat myself before somebody else beats me. So let's talk about another truly great company. Define their market, saw immense growth, and then he died. They almost died. And it's a company that I love a lot because it had a lot of meaning to me growing up. That's Lego. Round of applause if you've ever played with Legos. Okay, cool. Big, wonderful brand. Big fan of the Lego brand. I played with them a ton as a child, and my wife, to this day, still the majority of her photos aren't of me. They're of Legos in various settings. These are pictures from her Instagram feed. She uses a multi-$1,000 camera to take pictures of tiny plastic figures, but they have a lot of meaning to her, right? Legos still have a place in our lives. And in 2003, Lego almost went bankrupt. In fact, we thought that Mattel was the largest toy manufacturer. We thought that Mattel was going to buy them. Or private equity firms were circling like vultures. They loved the idea of buying Lego because it's had a great loyal customer base, had a great business model. It was just poorly managed, and it had become bloated. But again, put yourself into their mindset. Between 1932 and 1998, they had never made a loss. They had never lost money in the better part of a century. They were definitively linked with toys. And it wasn't because they had some proprietary technology, by the way. Their patent expired in the 80s. And there's plenty of people who were building block-based toy systems. And it wasn't that competitive pressure that was protecting them. And yet, this is what happens leading into the 2000s. Now suddenly they're losing lots of money every year. And then they did this. How did they make that pivot? That's a fascinating story. That's a company that managed to survive into the future by focusing on its core customer and by focusing on how it can compete with itself. A lot of it was just know thyself, right? They didn't actually know how much it cost to produce some of their units. Some of the really cool fiber optic ones actually cost more to produce than they were selling it for. And they didn't know that. Culture of complacency had set in. A good fact, a rather terrifying fact for most businesses, exciting for you because you're startup entrepreneurs, you can beat someone else with the exact same business model that you just measure better. You can out-leverage them in growth, you can out-leverage them in customer retention, you can do a better job at solving for that model, and you can beat somebody without doing anything remarkable. I talked to a flower company in Boston, in the United States, and they were very concerned because their competitor was spending way more on advertising and PPC than they could possibly afford. And they knew they had the same suppliers, right? So their cost of goods sold is the same. They knew they had the same price point. So it wasn't like the other person was charging a premium or underselling them and doing volume. They were still basically selling it the same way. And so I went over to their competitor and I bought some flowers. And while I was buying flowers, they asked me, who are you buying your flowers for? I said, buying it for my wife. I said, why are you buying it? I said, well, it's her birthday. And they're like, would you like us to remind you next year when it's her birthday? Yes, I would, because I'm terrible at remembering people's birthdays. Is there anybody else's birthday that you forget pretty often? It's like, well, I should probably get my mom flowers, and I should get my 4 sisters. I should probably get them flowers. It's like, okay, cool. Is there anything else that you could have flowers for in your life? I'm like, actually, people bring flowers to my church. Like, that might be something I want to do. They got so good at figuring out what it was that I needed to accomplish with flowers. I'm not buying flowers because I like taking beautiful things and watching them die slowly, right? I'm buying flowers because it makes people happy, and it shows how much I care. They were good at analyzing that, and all they did was make me buy more frequently. and they were able to outgrow the customer that originally come talk to me. They also made a fateful decision at Lego. They wanted to be cool and hip and hire the best innovators, the new design innovators from the best art schools in Europe, from the best design schools in Europe. And they got rid of all the old Lego designers who had built stuff in the 70s and the 80s. They brought in this amazing team of sharp innovators. And you know what? Not every industry needs to be innovated on. Hate to break it to you. Sometimes focusing on the customer is the best thing. So the CEO of Toys R Us, which is a massive toy retail chain in the United States and globally, said to the CEO of Lego, we want the brick. Like, this is what makes Lego Lego. You guys have lost sight of that. They'd ballooned to more than 12,000 different pieces, colors, and sizes. Not only a logistical and financial nightmare, but it wasn't a story that you could sell easily to customers. And their new CEO at Lego, Nudstorp, agreed. We weren't listening to customers anymore. That's what almost killed us. And so they hired their best customers. They actually had adult fans of Lego. The AFOL symposium is like a thing, right? My wife would go if she had the time, I suppose. They went out and hired their best customers. They weren't the world's greatest designers from the best design schools in Europe. They were just adults who like to play with Legos. They hired one of them as their CEO, Nudstorp, and then they hired other people who just fit in well with their, people were economists, they were business people, they were artists, they were whatever, but they loved Lego. They were their core customer, and they were able to hire them. They also cut off the riffraff. So I know in the previous example, I talked about how IBM created a whole new business unit, this like super advanced skunkworks team, sent it down to Florida, and created this new product, expanded into this new market. That was the right thing to do because the PC serves the job to be done for their market segment better than the mini computer, better than the mainframe did. Lego, on the other hand, had created theme parks. They'd launched a computer software team when they knew very little about building computer software. And the new CEO closed all of those down. He spun all of them off for some of them, and the rest of them he closed down. He said, if we're not excellent at it, if it's not delighting our customers, we're not going to do it. We're going to be Lego. There's an important, very, very important difference between chasing a new, interesting, exciting opportunity and focusing on solving for your customers. The right thing to do, and I've seen this already this morning when we're talking on our mentor sessions with you guys, if you've got two $1 billion opportunities that you feel like you can address, the right thing to do is not try and do both at the same time and build a $2 billion, address that $2 billion problem. The right thing to do is ignore one entirely and focus on being excellent at one thing. Focus, focus, focus. It's hard, right? You're like, oh, but like we could get a $100,000 deal from Staples if we just build this additional functionality and just, it's moving us into the CRM space. And I know we're not a CRM company, but like, come on, let's be a CRM company. CRM companies are great. That's not the right answer. That's the mistake that Lego made that almost killed them. Part of this is you're all really smart people. I've managed a lot of really smart people. I've had the privilege of managing very brilliant people in my time, and you guys are a pain in the butt to manage because you want to add complexity where there is none. If there isn't a complex system with interesting math and different charts and everything else like that, you want to create a complex system because smart people love working on smart challenges. I was in a board meeting for a startup that I consult, and they were doing a customer retention charts, and they had the cohort retention and all the right charts, the fun, fancy words and fancy math, very colorful, well-designed graphs. Because I'm a data geek, I asked for the data afterwards. They were analyzing 4 canceled customers. That is not a good use of your time. Don't add complexity where none exists. If you can, hire your fans and customers. Again, I work at HubSpot, sales and marketing technology. We are marketers marketing to marketers about marketing. So I know that you know that I know what you did on my website and that I can target you on it. It's hard for me to be creepy because every time I put, hey, I saw you visited this webpage and you looked on this stuff and you clicked on this button, your answer isn't, oh my God, that's so weird that HubSpot's watching me do that. Your answer is, wow, that's really cool. I want to be able to do that to my customers in a slightly less creepy way. Hiring your best customers helps you grow. they also, Lego really focused on what they were doing for the kids. We talked earlier about the jobs to be done, right? It's not a faster horse. It's not a quarter-inch drill bit. It's to get from one place to another safely and quickly. It's to have a quarter-inch hole. And when I played with Legos as a child, I would build a house, right? And then I would take those pieces apart and I would build a Star Destroyer. And then I would take those pieces apart and I would build, well, maybe a horse, right? There was no limit. The use cases, the applications of Lego's product was limited by the imagination of children, which is probably one of the most limitless and powerful sources of creativity in the world. Another beautiful part of Lego, obviously the people who paid for it. Right? When I was a child, I didn't buy Lego. My dad bought Legos. And I didn't come from a particularly wealthy family. My dad couldn't get me like the newest, best toys all the time, you know, the shoes that light up when you run. Like that wasn't my childhood. That wasn't me growing up. But he could buy me Legos. And for one box of, you know, $15 Legos that came with 500 pieces or something like that, he could entertain me, keep me happy, keep my creativity moving for years. For years. So that was the job to be done for my dad. And that was the job to be done for me. And Lego did a fantastic job of solving for that. They also went over to MIT and did a study and found out that kids that play with Legos are brilliant. You're learning problem solving, you're learning spatial reasoning, you're learning all these incredibly valuable skills that help you be successful in the modern era. Not only is it a relatively cheap way for my dad to keep me entertained, but he's setting me up for success in life. In fact, Sergey Brin, the founder of Google, one of the founders of Google, credited playing with Legos as a child as a core part of the reason why he was successful and able to see how pieces fit together in a way that delivered what he was seeing, that delivered the value. So Lego now drives product suggestions right from its customers. This is I encourage you to vote for this, just because women in NASA, I feel, have been lost to history, and they've made incredible contributions to the United States space program. So if you feel like going and voting for the Women of NASA Lego collection, feel free. But the key here is that they're listening to their customers, obsessively solving for the customers. They hired their customers, and they built the business around it. So now I want to talk about one more company that wasn't doing so well, that somehow managed to strap rocket skates onto its feet and do the hard thing. That's Nintendo. Nintendo had a great Q2 of this year. This is a chart any CEO would love to see. This is the launch of Pokemon Go with Nintendo. Now, I will point out that pretty soon after this, the market figured out that Nintendo doesn't actually own Pokemon Go. Niantic Labs is the software developer that made Pokemon Go. Nintendo owns part of the Pokemon company and has made some investments in Niantic. But they don't own Pokemon Go. But their stock price is still really, really high. Because the idea that a company like Nintendo, which has pushed back on the idea of mobile gaming and stuff in general for a long time, would do something this innovative was a really promising sign. They're sitting on a lot of passion. They're sitting on a lot of customer satisfaction, just like Lego was. And now they're doing something interesting with it. And the market finds that interesting. And by the way, I didn't do my survey. This audience, there might actually be some round of applause if you play Pokemon Go at all. Oh, okay. Round of applause if you're Team Mystic. Oh, God. Let me guess. Valor? Instinct? Oh, all right. You guys are weird. We'll go battle for a gym later. Pokemon Go took 19 days to reach 50 million downloads. It is the fastest thing in history to ever get 50 million people using it. Way faster than, you know, some of the things we think of like Candy Crush and stuff like that. Oh, this is the alert you get if you're trying playing when you're in a car, you're going too fast. But also compare this to other innovations that we've seen as transformative to our lives. Radio took 38 years, television 13 years. Angry Birds, relatively fast, 35 days. Pokemon Go smashed it, 19 days. Also, eats a lot of time. So I spent a fair amount of time at these events. pretending like I'm answering my emails, and in reality, I'm farming. There's a Pokestop here, right? So there's two of them, actually, they overlap, so I'm farming it. It eats up a lot of time, more than Facebook, more than Snapchat, more than Twitter, Instagram, or a lot of other mobile devices. Also, the fastest app to ever reach $500 million in revenue, eating people's money. 3.3 times faster than Candy Crush, and almost 7 times faster than most of the other apps in terms of reaching $500 million. Projected to do $1 billion in revenue by the end of this year, a mere 6 months after its launch. This is Nintendo's revenue charts over the last few years. Not a good chart, right? Like, we don't want to see that sort of decline. We like to see up and to the right, not down and to the right, as investors, as stockholders, as business owners. Nintendo should see, unless they do something horribly, horribly wrong, and I don't own any stock in Nintendo, so this isn't like a forward-looking statement that you can sue me for, they should see an increase that reverses their declining trend just off Pokemon Go. Just off the revenue from that in the 6 months that it's been out. In the frankly, very basic, limited gameplay that it has. There's not a lot of options to give Pokemon Go your money. They haven't even begun to tap that, nor have they begun to tap the rest of their intellectual property. There's some rumors about a Mario game. Anybody see the Olympics closing ceremonies? No? Where the Prime Minister pops out dressed as Mario? No? Okay, whatever. Prime Minister popped out dressed as Mario. It's that impactful, that core to the experience, to this, that much passion around their business. So we know that a combination of 3 companies invested in Niantic: Google, Pokemon Company, and Nintendo. We don't know what the terms of that deal were, but let's go ahead and assume that Nintendo actually fronted all of that $30 million, even with the fact that they're only getting an estimated 10%, 10 cents on every dollar from Pokemon Go. They got their money back in 55 days. That's not a bad investment. And they've opened up a completely new era for them, for the post-console world. And by the way, in true disruptor fashion, Pokemon Go is additive. These are the revenue charts for basically the other games in the app stores from the company App Annie, which does tracking on this. The revenue and stuff really doesn't fluctuate. It hasn't tanked. It's not like everybody's like, oh, I was spending money on Candy Crush, now I'm going to go spend money on Pokemon Go. What's happened is they brought in previously non-participating people into the market. Myself being one of them. This is an instant message I received from my wife a few weeks after Pokemon Go came out, saying, you spent $80 on Pokemon? And this is the receipts that back her up, which are me buying various things and stuff inside the Pokemon app. I have never spent $1 on a mobile app in my life. There's never anything important enough for me that I would spend money on it. And at this, these numbers are a little bit on, I'm probably close to like $150 now that I've spent in aggregate on the Pokemon app. And I'm not that weird, right? There's 30 million daily active users plus of the Pokemon Go app who are being bought into this market. So Nintendo, like I said, actually didn't revise their forward earnings projection because they told the market that they had already factored Pokemon Go's revenue in. Although they could never have factored how successful it was going to be. You can't plan for success that great. But the reason that their stock was successful, that I'm talking about them on stage, that everybody's excited about it, is because them doing something interesting at all is kind of a new concept. Right? When was the last time they did something other than a marginal improvement on their existing console business? You know? They figured out how to compete with themselves. They took a risk. They also did something else that was interesting. They didn't build it. They didn't have to risk it. They let somebody else use their intellectual property and build on the platform of their intellectual property, right? They're not a mobile app business. Niantic is. They let Niantic go and build on the platform, the ecosystem that they have of these incredibly valuable characters with valuable stories. So platform business is another one that it's a very overused term. That is, and there's actually funny stories about this. The way that Wall Street and stock folks and investors define a platform company is probably different than how most of us in the software engineering space define it. Wall Street defines a platform company as a company on which other companies build their business. They're the platform for that business's success. We define it as usually a software ecosystem, but something that allows other people to add value to our network and get value in return. Think of app marketplaces, right? Apple, platform business. Google, platform business. Salesforce, I know, is in the house. Platform business with their app marketplace. And HubSpot, too. Also, fun fact, platform business. The reason platform businesses are very interesting is because they allow you to test an infinite long tail of use cases. Nintendo could have been like, okay, well, let's build an app like this, and then we've got to go build all this localized data, and then maybe we should build it in this way, or I don't know, maybe we should build it as a handheld console. They could have gone and done it on their own. Instead, they let somebody else do it on their platform. Let them bear the risk and get most of the money, right? 10 cents on the dollar isn't, they could have gotten more if they'd have just tried to do it themselves, but they couldn't have tested every possible value iteration. They couldn't have said, let's build a mobile app, and let's build another PC game, and let's do a movie, and everything else like that. By letting other people build it, they lose some of the value, but they get that validation. They find out what's valuable, what their customers love. So let's apply what we learned. We're going to launch a startup right here on stage with just between you, me, and the wall, right? No one else is listening. It's not like we're recording this and just live streaming it to the world or something. You and I work at a company that has a lot of intellectual property in the form of stories. Maybe it's a book publisher or something like that, right? We're going to launch a startup that creates a marketplace that allows other people to use our characters in interesting ways. So let's say you're, who publishes Harry Potter? Was it Penguin, right? Publishes Harry Potter? Let's say you're Penguin Publishing. You could go out and build a Harry Potter mobile app, and you could go out and build a Harry Potter Lego set, and you could go out and you could build Harry Potter interactive television experience, and you could go out and have a Harry Potter theme park and all this other sort of stuff. Harry Potter books, Harry Potter fan fiction, right? You could just hire a bunch of authors and have them write all these tangential storylines to the Harry Potter intellectual property that you own. But instead, let's imagine now that you open that up and let other people do stories, let other people do cartoons, let other people build on that intellectual property and see what resonates with the market so that you don't have to do that. You don't have to do stuff you're not good at, and you don't have to take the risk. And thinking about just going with the intellectual property thing, very valuable audience. So Mad Men, which was a TV show launched by AMC, on more than half of them, or almost half of them, make more than $100,000 per year. Community, another TV show, under 40, notably wealthy, primetime viewer, college educated. BBC, for example, if they wanted to have a Doctor Who show or cartoon or book or whatever, let you test those infinite number of use cases on what are people actually going to find successful and what would they play. It offends me that there's not a Doctor Who mobile game, right? It's all about traveling and going to new and interesting places and interacting with the world around you. All right, there's 2 people that laughed. Any Doctor Who fans? A round of applause. All right. We're going to have our own special nerd convention after this. We'll grab a drink and talk about nerd stuff. There's a saying, a phrase in Japanese, roughly translates to standing out from the crowd invites trouble for yourself. Another way to look at it is the highest nail gets hammered down. So you think about the value that this adds. Not only am I giving revenue, but I learn about my customers. So if I'm I didn't know Salesforce was going to be here when I decided to use a CRM, by the way, so I apologize, folks. But let's say I'm a CRM marketplace. I've got an app marketplace, and I've got somebody built a cool field routing app, and somebody built a lead scoring app, and somebody built a marketing automation app. And the y-axis here is the number of people who are using that app. Well, now my core product team knows a lot. Right? We know that maybe my customer base, that's my really valuable people who upgrade a lot, who have high customer and revenue retention, they really want field routing app. I can incorporate that into the core software experience. The platform company not only allows me to generate revenue that I would never otherwise have had, but the platform strategy, the way of thinking, not just software, but the way of thinking about letting other people test infinite use cases of value for your customers opens up a lot of doors and helps you deliver value faster. So you probably already see a bunch of reasons why this specific startup won't work. And the common response is okay, Nobody can do that, so I'm not going to worry about it, right? Nobody can go build an intellectual property marketplace, although I bet one of you already has it half-coded, and do all this other stuff. But the smart employee is going to try and figure out if there's a way to do that. The smart manager is going to make sure that their team is pointed at what adds value to the customer, even when it comes down to things as simple as sales compensation. If your sales compensation, your monetization isn't aligned with customer success, you're probably going to run into problems. The smart manager focuses on that. The smart company builds an environment where innovation can happen around you or within you, but it doesn't happen to you. That's what happened with IBM. That's what happened with Lego. That's what happened with Nintendo. They did not allow the innovation to happen to them. Because you smart folks in here, right? All very determined, all want to be Fortune 500 CEOs, you're incredibly motivated, intelligent people. If they don't do it, you're going to. And so this is how you should be looking at it, which is what are these people not serving? What parts of their market are they not serving that I can go take a shot at? Don't focus on why something is impossible. Don't focus on come on, we're never going to get all these components into a box this big for a personal computer, right? That's ridiculous. Ask yourself, what would happen to your business if that did happen? What would happen to our customers? Where would they go? And if the answer is not continue paying us, you should focus on that. You should try and be that disruption before somebody else. So I'm a little embarrassed. This is a live shot of my phone, and apparently there's a large audience that has appeared that I need to capture. So I'm going to go play Pokemon Go. I hope you guys have enjoyed this presentation. I hope it's inspired you to look at the opportunities in the market, to understand how incumbents are going to defend themselves, and to use that to plan how you attack and how you build incredible businesses and how you grow your economies. Thank you very much.